Hi, everyone. I'm Bernice McDonald, and I have to say, I have just had the most amazing conversation with Kim Sorrelle. She is an incredible host. We talked about all things courage, and I hope that you will take the time to give a listen and support her in her podcast because every one of her stories and her guests will move you along in your life.
Welcome to the show. I'm so happy that you're here. You are going to be so happy that you're here. I am Kim Sorrelle. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. Last week, I got to speak at the UN, the United Nations. That was so cool, so fun. And I get to do so many fun things in life. But my favorite thing to do by far is meet people. And I get to meet some of the coolest people that walk the face of this earth. Today, you get to meet one of those with me, Bernice, who has quite a story to tell and has some really practical, incredible advice that I've not heard before. But by the end of this show, it could really change your life. So we are going to dive in. Bernice, welcome to the show.
It's so great to be here, Kim. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get into everything, but I want to start with you and start with your story. I want people to really get to know you. So I would like you to tell us about 8-year-old Bernice.
Well, I'm so glad you asked me that. Actually, though if you had asked me a few years ago, I wouldn't have been able probably to tell you because I actually met that Bernice back a few years ago, and that moment really changed my life. She was so quiet, which I didn't realize. I don't think some people would believe that now, but she had the imagination of, I don't know, she would just could play by herself. She used her bike like I remember riding in the schoolyard when nobody was there, and my bike was my mighty steed. That was my horse, and I was a princess riding my bike. And I would ride to the fire escape at my school. It was this big old building with this outside set of huge stairs that went up to the fire escape. And I would go up there, and that would be the top of my castle. And I would look out over my fields, and I would see my prince coming off in the distance, riding with his army coming to visit me. And, you know, that Bernice lived in this world of love, of appreciation. She was in reality living in a very busy home. We lived in a house that was probably 700 square feet with 5 kids. I was the second oldest. So there wasn't a lot of time for me, I think. And I think in lots of ways it planted the seeds of feeling as if I wasn't enough, of craving love, of wanting to be seen, of wanting to have some time on my dad's knee, which I didn't get very much. So when I met her a few years later, I realized all of this, the need that she had inside. And I was talking to a therapist. It was dealing with my marriage at the time, and I had to drive away from that appointment, and I stopped and I just remembered her heart. I could feel that little girl. And I sat there and I wept because it was like almost as if I could give myself permission to be that child, to feel the loneliness, the fear that she felt, the fear that she wasn't enough and wasn't going to be, given what she needed. So that's probably way more than you wanted.
Oh, no, that's great. That is so great. I mean, a lot of people aren't so in touch really with feelings of that time. And it can be a time that really shapes you because if your parents divorce during that time, it's really tough. If you lose somebody during that time, it's just so tough, and it shapes you for the rest of your life. And so
Yeah.
it's no, I love what you said. I love the tower. I can picture the whole thing. You riding up on the horse, going in the tower. having the big long thing come down, whatever,
Exactly.
right? With the pointy hat thing and the whatever. And then your prince, your handsome, handsome prince coming from far away to save you,
Yeah.
the wicked witch or whoever, whatever it is.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I love that you did that. And it is interesting to me because at that age, we have that kind of imagination. Like we
Mhm.
can take ourselves anywhere. Like we can transport to Disney World or to Mars, to Paris, to wherever, right? And we can take ourselves anywhere. And I feel like we lose that. Like
Yeah.
as we get older, we think of it as childish, maybe an
Yeah.
imagination or something. But there's something so beautiful about
Yeah.
imagination.
Yes, it's so true. And I believe that there, when you go back and you really look at that child, you feel the dreams. You feel what they were longing for, what they hoped their life would turn out like. And I really believe that as we get older, like once we move into the teenage years, a lot of those dreams are just popped like bubbles, right? There, or maybe I should say stomped on, because
Yeah.
the reality of what life is begins to set in. And I really think that that becomes, as many, many people have written about, and psychology is all about, right? It's when we get disappointed that the stories don't turn out the way we want them to, that, the meaning that we give to that does shape us into all the other older decades, just like you were saying. We become what we've decided is meant for us during that time.
Yeah, what we've decided and what people have told us about us,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Because that's one thing I've written in my book that I've written. There's one whole section that's called "Who Tells You Who You Are?" Because I believe that if you're going to be yourself, you have to figure that out. Whose voices are you listening to in your head? Who has told you that this is who you are, and that is who you are, and this is who you're not? So don't even think of going there.
Yeah, yeah. It's so true. And it's funny to me. Like when I go to a class reunion and
Yeah.
in high school's pretty formative years, right? Some people love high school. I was one of those. Some people hate high school, but it's high school. We all go through it. And there were groups. And I just felt like I was friends with everyone. I didn't have a big class, 130 kids, and it
Mhm.
was great. Like we were really tight, and I love everybody in my class. It was so fun, and of course I had closer friends, but I just loved everybody in the class. But there were groups within our class, like there were, I don't know, the cheerleaders, and then the kids that felt like they didn't belong, right? That
Yeah.
that didn't quite
Nerd.
fit somewhere, right? Yeah, and the jocks and the, whatever you want to label people, but groups that they were in. And when I go to a class reunion, I feel like uh, people fall back into that role, whatever their high school role was, like they
Yeah,
go back into that role. So,
it's
like for
true.
me, my role was just loving everybody. So it's not a big deal for me, but I see other people being shy about talking to certain people and yeah, so it's crazy that
Yeah, I
yeah.
can totally identify with that because I was one of those people that mostly tried to be a shadow on the wall in high school. I didn't like to draw. I hated being in trouble. And that included being in trouble with people not liking me, with my teachers not liking me. As soon as I was in any kind of situation where I was tending to get a little boisterous or, in with a certain number of kids who were being bad for the teacher that day, because the teacher didn't have control of the class. As soon as that would happen, and the teacher would say, if you kids don't settle down, you're going out in the hallway and I'm calling the principal. Like this, whoa, I was, just instantly good again. But that's who I was. Like, I didn't want to get in trouble. I just wanted to be invisible almost, because unless people were liking me. So I envy you that you were just able to be friends with everybody because really that's who I am. I'm very accepting as a person. That's who I think I could have been in high school if I hadn't had all of these other things that were going around in my head.
Yeah, yeah, my ego was probably a little too big. So,
Oh,
I'm not sure. Like, could have been, but it was really more about not thinking I'm so great, just loving the people that are there. But
yeah,
yeah, so it is interesting though, the way you feel about yourself. And
yeah,
like you mentioned earlier, feeling like you're not enough.
yeah, yeah. And that's kind of been the story of my life. Um, having that sense that I have to prove myself, that I'm never, I came to a place in probably my 30s, I think in decades all the time, right? So in about my 30s, I thought, I'm like a chameleon. I would just change color according to who I was with. Really sensing, watching people. I'm very intuitive, and I think that worked against me in lots of ways because I could sense if somebody wasn't happy with me or if they were criticizing me or if they didn't like what I said. That didn't stop me from standing up for myself a lot of times in certain situations, but I could just sense when I wasn't really fitting in. And so that created this person that was afraid to try anything new for fear that she would be criticized or look silly or fall flat on her face, and
Right.
it took a long time to change, and in fact, it took till my 50s to really decide that I wasn't going to be that person anymore.
So what would you tell yourself? What would you tell the in the 30s you?
Well, that Bernice was starting to come into her own. I was in a marriage that was pretty difficult, and I think that wasn't all bad. We can learn things from every situation we're in. And I think what that began to shape in me was this sense of being myself, like being independent, not being what someone else labeled me to be. That started to become very strong in me. I also ran to God in lots of ways, looking for validation. Like, tell me who I am, because I don't know, and I know I had this feeling inside that I had a purpose. I was here for a reason. This life just can't be this hard and be without meaning. And so in my 30s, I was searching a lot for the person I really am. And I would tell her today to just keep that search going because you're going to find that person. You're going to tap into the reason you're here, the thing that makes this all worthwhile. You're growing the characteristics of who you are. You're becoming the Bernice of the future. And that Bernice you are going to like because she has fought her way through and she is in a place where she loves being alive, and she loves doing what she's doing. It really has come into her own. So don't give up. Keep going.
That's good. That's great advice. That's good advice. You know, it's interesting. You said you talk in decades and how you were in your 30s and then in your 50s, this is what you would say, to the in the 30s you. Uh, I always thought, man, there are books about having babies, there are books about infants and toddlers, right? And adolescents, it goes on teenagers, dealing with teenagers, and then it kind of stops. But we could use books on how to get through your 20s
Yeah.
because it's different than getting through your 30s. That
Oh,
book, and then a book for your 40s, right? And
yes. Yes.
yeah,
That's a great idea.
yeah,
What? See, there's a series right there.
yeah,
Surviving.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's also different. It is also different.
It is.
And
And I think when you realize that, you start to give yourself a little grace, if you can realize that. Unfortunately, a lot of our realization comes not when we're in it, but after. You know?
so true, so true. Yeah, yeah, it is more in the after. Yeah, it's kind of funny because it's like you want to live for today, be
Yeah.
in the moment. Don't worry about tomorrow, let tomorrow take care of itself, right?
Yeah.
But you can think about tomorrow.
Yes.
And if you can realize that, you know what, I get to evolve, I
Yeah.
get to change, I get to grow like your whole life. So of
Yeah.
course your 50s are going to be different than your 30s.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling in your 30s right now going, wow, is this all there is? Nope,
Yeah.
it's not. It's not.
It's not.
Wait till you hit your 40s and then a
Yeah.
little bit more and then more in your 50s, right? So
I know.
yeah, yeah, so
I
good.
tell young people in their 30s, I because really I felt this way. I think my 30s was one of my favorite decades. Because I was having my kids, I was establishing myself, I was finding out who I was. The 20s, you're just lost in your 20s. I don't know. Like there's just
Yeah,
so many silly things you do and think, and so in your 30s, though, a lot of us have kind of planted our feet and we're saying, okay, what's the future like? And so my 30s, I did a lot of that and I started to kind of calm down, started to kind of get more settled. Even though life was tough. I was a mom. I was able to show a lot of love. I was finding out what kind of career I wanted, all of that. And then and then every decade, like when I got to 40, I stopped to celebrate because I really was very, conscious of aging. And so then 40 was like, my life is half over, you know? So I would stop and celebrate. And I still do this at the beginning of every decade. I look at the decade ahead and say, all right, who am I going to be in this decade? And I start to think, how am I going to dress? How do I want to wear my hair? What kind of attitude do I want to have? And actually, I started that in my 40s. And I started when I turned 40, I looked at what 40-year-old women, what style they had, and I decided what suits me. And so, who am I becoming in this decade? Certainly didn't have it all perfect, but it gave me a sense of self and the idea that I am an individual walking this whole path of life, just me. Like nobody else is guaranteed around me, but I am here as long as I am here. And I am the only person I have control over. So I need to decide, who am I going to be? And that like that has really become I still am afraid of aging and I hate aging in lots of ways. I'm coming to terms with it. Started to see life like a conveyor belt, right? So I'm moving along the conveyor belt and all these things that are happening are just normal. It's all good. Next step is heaven. Let's just get there, So, but yeah, those kinds of things that you talk yourself through. They're important as you
Mhm.
as you grow, as you get older.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's so true. And 40 seems so old when you're 17, right? And I think about like my grandparents, my grandpa, he retired at 55. He took an early retirement. He worked for the state of Michigan and he took early retirement and then he sat on a chair, his orange chair,
Yeah.
for the rest
Yeah.
of his life, I think. And man, they were old at 55. Well, I'm
Yeah.
well over 55 and I don't feel like I'm old, but my grandkids probably look at me the way I looked at my grandparents, right? But I going to getting to be 60, right?
Yeah.
Like before I turned 60, I
Yeah.
was kind of thinking 60.
Yeah.
Man, that sounds old.
Yeah.
Right? 60. And then I
Yeah.
started telling myself, no, 60 is the new 30, or whatever, trying to tell myself. But what I came to realize about 60 is it is an incredible time
Yeah.
because you can wear whatever you want. You can
Yeah.
say whatever you want. You can wear your
Yeah.
hair any way you want. Like,
Yeah.
you're beyond the point of judgment. You just get to be free, carefree, and just live your life. And so the expectations that we put
Yes.
on ourselves in our 30s, 40s, 50s,
Yeah.
fade away because it's like,
Yeah.
I'm in my 60s. Like, let's just do this thing. Let's enjoy. And it's nice to get rid of some of that
Yeah.
baggage or trying to please people, I think is part of it too, right? Like you don't please yourself for like make sure you're in a good spot so that you can be in a good spot for other
Yeah.
people. So yeah.
And I think that's exactly, as I was growing up and looking at my mom and her sisters, who were very close, and also seeing them when I was even, 25, is like they're turning, well, 45 or whatever, and older. And it's just like, oh, they're aging so much. But, as I did watch them, as I got to my 40s, then my 50s, and I saw them aging, what I saw were women who stopped living, like you said, just like your grandfather. They kind of thought that at 60, 65, and for women, a lot of times it's earlier because not a lot of women, at least previously, had careers, right? And so they would just crochet and sit and visit but they lost their sense of self. It was as if they knew at a certain point their life was done and now they're just coasting and now they are just ready to get sick, ready to let that kind of their body age and just get to the place where, they said, "Oh, I'm too old to do that. I'm too." And I looked at that and they were incredible women. They all had talents. They worked hard, very hard, but they had been told that they weren't allowed to be authors or artists or creators of any kind. They certainly wouldn't have been allowed to have a business. Their husbands never would have let them, or that would have been seen as very odd. So it broke my heart to see them pass away, most of them in their 80s. You know, sad. They it was as if they kind of drifted away, but drifted away in not in a celebratory way, but rather kind of it's almost like they just kind of got quieter and quieter and petered out. You know,
Yeah,
I
kind of
thought,
the disappearing that you talked about earlier.
yes. I thought I never want to be that. And I want to help women not to be that. I want to help them to sing with their loudest voice until the day they die, to to discover their purpose and live that purpose until they take their last breath. That is what really inspired me to keep going and to keep encouraging. I love to help women find out what that purpose is. What were you made for? What are those gifts, which I call their strange jewels? What do you think? Like everybody else has sort of ignored or told you to tone it down. What is that? Because that's probably a clue to something that makes you amazing, something that you are meant to do, meant to bring into a room when you walk in there to light it up. So those women I watched age and disappear became the motivation for me to help women in our generation to say, no way am I going quietly. I am going to go as me for as long as I am here.
Mhm. Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, I love that. So it took you figuring out that you were enough to know how to help other women do the same. And it took you figuring out your purpose to then help other women
Yes.
out their purpose. So the pain of not feeling like you're enough. The pain of the loneliness of what's my purpose, the questioning, whatever. And so you understand the pain. And anytime somebody's been through something, like other people, they might be able to relate some way, but not like if you've been through it yourself. And that's one of the things that makes you so good at what you do is
Mhm.
because you've been through it. You come from real life experience.
Well, and I'll tell you, speaking of 50s,
Yes.
what I did, and it's so true because like I said, I lived like a shadow on the wall for, so much of my life and so many parts of my life. I think And I kind of hate to say this, but I really think when I made the decision to leave my first marriage, that was the time when the first time I really took a strong stand for myself. And I walked away from something that was very difficult because I looked at the rest of my life and I thought, I don't want to be this person in this situation for the rest of my life. So that was a hard thing to do. And the next few years after that, I was single for 6 years and I was really on a quest. And I could see that God was working in me to bring all of these teenage things. It was as if I reverted back to teenage years, right? In the whole dating world, to bring them out so I could deal with them and really challenge them. So through that, I mean, I was always praying, God, bring me a knight in shining armor. You have to have a knight out there somewhere. There has to be one man left who is a knight. And it was so funny because I went on this 5 year journey of dating and broken hearts again and learning who I am and learning to stand up for who I am. And then one night, when I was at a place where I was ready to trust again, this man rescued me when my car wouldn't start. And, it was like 30 below here in the winter with Friday night after work. I just wanted to go home and my car wouldn't start because I had left my lights on again. So that was my fault. So, anyways, he offered to help me. And I had to think, do I trust him? He's a stranger. But we were in a public place. There were lots of people around. I said, I would appreciate that so much. And so he helped me. Now he couldn't get it going. We had to get a new battery, but he came back the next morning and helped and put the battery in. Well, it turned out he had lost his wife a year before to an aneurysm. And so he was a widower. But we clicked. And soon after that, we started dating. And that's the man I married a year later. So, literally, it was like a knight in shining armor. But I tell you that to tell you that at that point, I started to realize how fearful I am. And I was only going to get after over that fear if I did fearful things that I feared, which was like dating somebody and actually marrying them again and trusting. So I said to don't think we were married yet. I said, I want to get brave. I want to do things because I want to build my courage. And so I said, and he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, I have always thought I would like to go whitewater rafting. And he said, okay. And not knowing he would do this, he went right out and booked a whitewater rafting trip. Now, this person who's kind of a shadow on the wall, she would not ever have gone whitewater rafting. She might have wanted to, but anyways, we went on that trip. That was the first thing we did that really tested my fear resistance, that really helped me again to be the boss of my own fear, to say, thank you very much, fear. I appreciate you being here with me so much because I know you're just trying to protect me. But really, I want you, and this is something I'd learned while I was dating, go over there in the corner and eat a cookie because, I'm the boss. I need to make these decisions. I need to go forward. Even though I feel you and I hear you, I need to take control. I need to be the boss. And so, got out of the car, put on my wetsuit, listened to the instructions, climbed in that whitewater raft, and went on that. It was amazing. And once I settled down and realized I was in good hands with those guides and appreciated the beauty around me, it was like the most exhilarating experience I ever had. So,
Yes.
yeah, my husband and I continued to do those kind of adventures for several years because it just really helped me to realize fear is something you feel, but it's not always real. It's not like what it's telling you is not real. You're not going to die. You, you sometimes you might and you need to pay attention, but in reality, it's telling you that you need to take a chance, put a foot forward, and that's when the courage kicks in.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Because fear is big. And I think often we don't acknowledge fear or we don't acknowledge what we're feeling as fear.
Yeah.
or we think it's strictly protecting us, so we're not going to do something.
Exactly. Exactly. It becomes a barrier. It's like as soon as we feel that adrenaline rise up and our hearts start beating fast and, we get that panicky feeling, it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to do this because I'm in danger. But the thing about your fear is that doesn't know the difference between you actually falling off a cliff and doing something that's going to grow you. And perhaps what the danger is you being humiliated or looking like an idiot because you've never done that before. And so, you're not doing it very well. But, those are all the things. Once you get on the other side of that and you take those steps and start doing those things, you find out it wasn't anything to be afraid of. Um, you survived, and not only survived, but you grew, and you do what I call growing your courage muscles. You start to learn that, wow, I can do hard things. I
Mm.
can do this. And so then the next time it comes up, you're a little bit more willing. And the next time, a bit more willing. And I call it taking tiny, brave steps. You don't have to take the big leap across the cliff, across the chasm. You can just build a bridge and take the small steps
Mm.
across
That's
one
so
at a
good. That's so good. Yeah, the small brave steps. That's so good. I've heard that fear and excitement are like the same wave. Like, you feel fear, you feel excitement. It's the
time.
same feeling, just with a different narrative. So
Yeah.
yeah, so instead of being afraid, if you just go, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited. I try to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't like heights, but I'm excited to be way up here in the airplane.
Whoa. Yeah, I know. Although when you're zip lining, which I did too, and I never realized how afraid of heights I was. That's one thing I learned about that. Like you're way, way up in the trees, and suddenly, of course, all I could see in my head was the line breaking and me falling. That was in my head. So I had to turn around and go off the platform backwards so that I could keep my eye on the people that were still on the platform and just let that disappear and not look ahead and not look down. That's how I got through zip line. It was so terrifying. But
I
again,
did
at
that.
the end, I did it. I did it. And you finish and you go, I survived and I did that. Like that's amazing. And I sometimes compare it to having a baby too. It's like, okay, I had a baby. I went through all of that. I can do anything. I really can.
That's true. Women, we can do anything. If you had my word, yeah, yeah, that's so true. Well, and what a great way to live, Bernice. Like
Mm.
I love the idea of growing your courage muscle, of growing in courage and getting rid of fears that you have, but stepping out into things that maybe you wouldn't have 5 years ago, 10 years ago, last year even. But
Yeah,
just do it because it changes your life.
it does.
Yeah.
And what I find now, when I come up to hard things in business or in relationships or even like whatever circumstance, I always think of it like the conclusion I came to was that we're walking this path and these bombs go off or these boulders drop on us or somebody throws rocks at us with their judgment and their criticism. Those are all situations we have to face. When you have grown your courage muscles, instead of saying, just going immediately to anger and protection, where we draw the turtle shell around us and just say, oh, I'm not even got like, we just withdraw. Instead of doing that, you find that warrior part inside of you and you stand up and you say, okay, I've done hard things before. Remember ziplining. Remember walking on fire at the Tony Robbins conference. Remember, whitewater rafting. Okay, I have this warrior inside of me that I can look this right in the eye and decide who do I want to be in this situation? Who am I here? And so then from there, it's a calmer place. And then you decide, okay, this is how we're going to handle this. And so then you go forward and you make better decisions, not always the perfect ones, and not always after you haven't, like you always have a reaction, but then you have to decide to respond, not to react in that situation, and face it like the warrior. Face it like you're going off that zip line platform. It's scary, yeah, but you got to find a way to face it and to actually get stronger, grow better through that
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah, that's so true. I love that. I love warrior. I love that. Be a warrior. Yeah, and I think too, so when you discover, yes, you are enough, first of all, yes, you are. You're created to be whoever you believe you're created to be, live that. That's who you are. And
Yeah,
be that person. And when you have the courage, you're working up your courage to do that, right? It can take courage to be fully you, but you
yeah,
work up the courage to be that, then you do become, I think, a little less reactionary, or you could become, or you probably want to become, because as soon as we let somebody else dictate how we feel,
yeah,
we're out of control. We're not the warrior anymore. We're the person who's getting gunned down or whatever, right? So
yeah.
instead of getting riled because they want to rile you, somebody says something that normally would trigger something that would get you all riled up, taking a breath and going,
Yeah.
wait a minute, warrior. Let's look at this differently. How do we want to react? Do we want to be all upset, or do we want to be calm and handle this? Or, what do we want to do?
Exactly. And really, that's that. I call it the 90-second, which I kind of got from Tony Robbins because he has a form of this too. But just like what you said, if you stop and you breathe, take a breath, know that, like, feel that emotion for 90 seconds. And he planted this seed in me, and I thought, that's crazy. But it really works. 90 seconds, feel what you're feeling, react to it, get mad, get hurt, but then stop and say, like you said, who do I want to be in this situation? How does the real me want to respond? Because I think again with the aging, as we age, like fine wine, we are understanding who we really want to be, what values we want to live by, what legacy we want to leave behind. Do we want that to be a legacy of anger? Do we want that to be a legacy of, tearing everybody apart every time they attack, as if they're attacking us? Do we want to leave a legacy of hurt? Or do we want to leave a legacy of acceptance, a legacy of allowing people to be who they are and giving them the same courtesy, as you said earlier, that we wish people would give us? The courtesy to be in your situation, to be doing something, even if it's hurtful to someone else, out of your own experience, out of where you are in the moment. Like those sorts of realizations are what help us to then stop and breathe and think and see the whole situation. Take that in, kind of evaluate what is really going on here. And then you can make decisions again about what you do in that situation, so much easier from that perspective.
Yeah, from a more sane spot, right?
Yeah,
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 instead of a triggered spot,
yeah,
right? Yeah. So your blood pressure doesn't have to go way up, and
yeah,
your
it
heart
will.
doesn't have to beat out of your chest, right? But
It doesn't have to stay way up.
no,
You
there
can
you go. There you go. Right, right, right.
bring
Breathe,
it down
breathe,
again.
breathe, breathe, breathe. I really like that. The 90 seconds. Like, don't say a word, just
Yeah,
stand there. So I am so curious about this though. When you have done this, so somebody's mad and they are saying, Bernice, da 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 da, and you just stand there and feel the anger, feel the pain, feel whatever it is that you would feel or they want you to feel. Basically, they're projecting onto you. So for 90 seconds, because 90 seconds is quite a while
yes,
to just stand there quiet. So
yeah.
how do people respond to your 90 seconds of breathing solitude?
Well, it's not always quiet because when you react in that time, I mean, I'm just as volatile as anybody. I have a real defense mechanism that kicks in and will spit something back. But even if I do that, like that is when I think that is included in that 90 seconds, where then you stop and you don't allow yourself to go on and on and on, or to stay there in that anger, in that reactionary type of stance. That's where you listen to yourself when you hear what you're saying and you hear the tone of voice and you see the response on the person's face. You see yourself hurting them back or their anger, and you think, whoa, okay, I'm not liking myself in this situation. I don't like who I'm being right now. And this really isn't who I am at my core. So this is where you stop. And you and probably you don't even need 90 seconds at that point. But that's where you say, okay, I don't want to be this person. And you decide who you do want to be in that situation. Now, sometimes that's where you have to go quiet because that's where you have to really think it through or maybe take a step back and say, whoa, I got to take a break or I need to walk away for a minute. I need to, I think I'm just going to come back to this in a little bit. And then you spend some time thinking about how do I want to react? How am I going to be? I know sometimes my husband and I have been in some really tight situations, both on the same side, but in family situations that are very difficult. And things like my first response is, I don't want to handle this. Like, I don't want this to be happening right now. And so I do respond, but then I stop and I think and I take a breath and sometimes a longer breath. And then I will, many times I've gone back to my husband and I've said, okay, I don't want to treat this situation like this. I want to really think this through. What's the right thing to do here? Even if we don't want to do this, what is the right thing? How
Right.
can I become, and even in thinking in that direction, you're starting to bring yourself back to a place of good character, the character that you want to have, the person that you want to be. And so the 90 seconds is a guide, but it doesn't always happen in literally in the 90 seconds. It can be, all kinds of things within that 90 seconds, but then you stop and decide what's
Yeah.
next.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Although I gotta say, in thinking about it,
Yeah.
if I was irate, my voice raised, whatever, mad about something, and somebody just stood there quietly for 90 seconds, it'd bring me down too,
Yeah.
I
And
think.
that has happened as well. Yeah.
Or make me more angry, I guess.
Again,
Hopefully,
gives you that breath,
right,
though.
right,
Like
right.
if you can think, okay, let myself feel this. Don't say anything. Just don't react. Just let it be. Like, duck off a water's back. I mean, a water off a duck's back backwards. But just let it be. And don't react right away. Like don't make a decision about what you're going to do instantly. Pause and then find that way to react in the way that you feel the best about.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like Jesus is in the pause.
Yes. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, like just take that, however many seconds it takes you, whatever, but take that 90-second break and think, who do you want to be? Do you want to be that person that they go home and talk about because you were
Yeah.
so out of control? You don't want to be that person. Nobody wants to be that person, or that person that gets so riled up that then you're going to be angry at everything you see, right? Because that can happen. You don't want to be
Yeah.
that person. And that's not
Yeah.
who you are. So
No.
back to
And
your roots. Who are
that
you?
wasn't who Jesus was either. He gave space to
Yeah.
everybody to
Yes.
be in the moment that they were in. And if that meant they needed to be angry right then, he let them. You know, if they needed to spew hate right there, or if they needed to make a wrong decision, he let them because he gave the space to be who they are. And I think in lots of ways, that's kind of where I've gotten in my life. It's like, okay, you do you. Like, I hate that saying, it's so close, but it's like, okay, if you need to be this way, then I need to give you the room to do that. And we'll talk about it at some point in the future. But right now, I understand. This is where you're coming from because you can't help it right now. It doesn't mean you don't set your boundaries and say, whoa, please don't talk to me like that. Or this is my line in the sand, or maybe, we should talk later or whatever. Um, but you still have to give people room to grow,
Mhm.
to be becoming themselves as well as yourself. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about doing that for yourself is that you start to see that everybody deserves that space to be who they are and to be growing at the rate they're growing. And maybe they'll never grow past that. I mean, in some ways, you have to accept the fact that some people just get stunted at 21 and they never, you know, grow beyond that point. And that's just the way it is.
That's on them. Doesn't really have anything to do with you, right?
Exactly.
That's on them. You don't control them. They control themselves. So however they want to live their lives, live your life,
Yeah,
whatever that means to you. But
exactly.
but you don't have to get sucked in.
Yes, exactly. You can just be an observer at that point. And you can also like you feel the hurt. Like if what they're doing is hurtful to you, then you set that boundary, but you also realize that they're not coming at a place necessarily with the intention. Well, sometimes they do, but still, you have to realize like you can only control your response in that situation and you don't let them hurt you. Um, but you also manage your own feelings so that you process for yourself, not for them or not blaming them. You think my reaction, my response is my responsibility.
My response is my responsibility. I love that. So as we're talking about it, it's occurring to me that it's not two separate things. It's not small walks of bravery, small
Yeah.
steps of bravery,
Yeah.
or this whole separate thing of taking 90 seconds. But there's courage in taking the 90 seconds. It takes courage to do that.
That's so true. Yeah. Because you know, I think it, I think it takes so much more courage even to want to be yourself and to fight for that person. That reminds me, I have this four-piece courage framework, I call it. And, the first step is waking up your courage and realizing that you're facing fear. The second one is embracing who you are. Understanding yourself is so key. Then you stand up for yourself. That's the third one. Be your best advocate. Stand up for you. And that way you get to the fourth phase, which is making your impact on the world. And I think all of that, that's your purpose. And so the reason that you want to be the best person you can be is because you have that purpose to live. And so it does take courage. It takes so much courage just to relax and be yourself and stop people pleasing. You don't let other people tell you who to be. Walk into a room. That's what I say, and I have to tell myself this often. What am I bringing into the room? I am bringing courage. I am bringing acceptance. I am bringing empathy. So when I walk into a scary situation, that's how I talk myself out of focusing on the fear. Still feel the fear. But instead, I say, I am bringing this to the table. I am bringing this into the room. Totally changes you and helps you relax into being the person that you are.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so true. So true. Yeah, it's interesting, right? But standing up for yourself, kind of going back to that, that doesn't mean you have to yell and scream to stand up for yourself.
No.
It's just holding your ground.
Yeah, exactly. And to do that, you have to know yourself. Like,
Gotta
why
know.
do I need to hold my ground? Like, what are my values?
Mhm.
Because often anger or fear or uncertainty come from when somebody else is crossing your your bound, like crossing your values. Their values are not measuring up to, they're not lining up with yours in the moment. So you have to be brave enough to say, whoa, this is not me. This is not what I want to do. With my second husband, I did that a lot in the beginning. And that's really how I found the courage even to get married again, was be able to say, I'm not comfortable with that. This is not who I am. To me, that's standing up for yourself. To say, I don't like Mexican food.
Right. Yeah.
Even that, you're standing, you know yourself and you're standing up for that. And it's okay. I mean, sometimes then what that does is give you permission to then say, I don't really care for that, but because I love you, let's
Yeah.
go do that
Right.
because, hey, I want to see you happy.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, so holding your ground, knowing what your ground is, like you
Yeah.
said, your values, whatever, knowing what your ground is, and then
Yeah.
holding it.
Yeah.
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 Which if every teenager knew this,
Yes.
wouldn't that be something, right? Like, don't give in to peer pressure or anybody's pressure. Just be you. Well, and it's okay to say I don't like Mexican food.
Yeah.
Or I don't agree with that, what was just said, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's okay to do those things.
Yeah.
And
And I think first, like the reason we don't is because we think we need to do that to be loved because we're craving that acceptance so much. And I think when you're in your teens, you need that validation so badly because you're trying to figure out who you are and you're seeing that you're not the same as that person. You're not the same as that person. You're not the same as your parents. So who are you? Like that's the beginning of that journey. Who do I want to be? And it's very few teens that actually come out of there with that sense of strong self-knowledge, and being okay to be themselves. Some I've seen are amazingly that way, and I say hats off to their parents because I think they must have done something really right for that to happen. But, it is a long journey. And really, I think the journey of life is about getting to know yourself and realizing what it is, that fear doesn't have to hold you back, that you instead can partner with fear. You can use it as a cautionary voice. And then you can decide that you're going to be the boss and, you still make the decisions, not based on what fear is telling you, but because you want to become more of who you are.
that's so good. That's so good. Okay, so I'd love for you to relate all this to when you go through a tough time, when you lose somebody, when you get a divorce, when there's a big thing that happens in your life that makes you want to crawl under a rock. Like,
Yeah.
where does bravery play a role in that?
Well, I think in the times when you're not going through those things, I think there are important decisions that you need to make. For example, who are you going to be? Because when those tough times happen, that bomb goes off or that boulder drops on you and flattens you for a time. You have to decide, you have to know who you want to be during those times. So that would be one thing I would say, and something that I know I worked on a lot was just to know my own values and know who I wanted to be so that when the test came, I could remember that. But if you haven't done that, I think that when you go through those times, that is a time you need to um, allow yourself to really feel the emotions that you feel and to know this is life. These are the things like for me, it always helps me to pull back. And I think in stick figures for some reason and see myself as an individual on the path. And I am walking from birth to death on my own. All this stuff happens in all these decades. This is life. The thing is, we are not meant to live a beautiful life. We are meant to live in a war zone where all of these things happen. So when something like a death of a spouse happens, or a divorce, or a child passes away, or there's a big sickness, you have to stop in that time and realize this is an event. that's happening around me in my world. This is as if I'm in a war zone and a bomb has gone off. So I need to decide how I'm going to respond. And you don't always do it perfectly. And sometimes you do it like you crawl into bed and you stay there for a week, but then you have to think, allow yourself to think, who is it that I want to be? This warrior side of me, what is she telling me to do? How can I get up and take really small steps to help myself start to get back into life or to face this such a hard thing, to face it, to really understand what's happening here and more how I, like 1 minute at a time, how am I going to be? And, sometimes depending on the size of the thing, we can't even see a day ahead. I remember when I first came out of, when I separated from my husband, it was like 1 hour at a time. Like in that hour, who am I going to be? Am I going to let myself cry for this hour? Am I going to apply for that job and take that step? Am I going to actually ask that question? Am I going to spend some time in my journal finding some things that make me strong? Am I going to spend this time with God? Those little steps really are what carry you through to the week and then the month, you know, past that.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah, so true. So that's really interesting to me because I don't know that you necessarily or normally or I'm not I can't really speak for the world, so I'm not saying that or I'm not I don't know what I'm saying, but this is what I'm saying. I uh never thought of preparing for hard times before they happen. And yet we all know they're going to happen. Like, a vacation's coming. So
Yeah.
you do the laundry, you pack the bags, right? You put it together, whatever it is you need. And
Yes.
so uh, it makes sense to prepare because hard times are going to come. No,
Ex-
nobody's immune.
exactly. And you never know when. You never know when. You know, um, it's something that um and of course you don't want to live in that doomsday fear, where the fear is taking over your mind because this might happen or that might happen. But I think like that's one reason why I did all those things that tested my courage. I faced my fear. I can honestly say doing those things began to prepare me for the things in life that come along. Because when you get to that moment when that happens and you realize something has happened, your mind is already at that place where you're saying, I can do hard things. I
Mm,
have done hard things in the past, and I can do this hard thing. Even though it feels like I'm just going to die and I don't think I can get through this, I know I will. I know I can. And then, you find your way out of the smoke and the debris and the dust, one little step at a time. And give yourself so much grace because you're going through a hard time. This is tough, but that doesn't mean you have to live there. You are going to come through. And again, being that individual on a path, there are things that are being grown in you, even though you don't realize it. There are, I call it, I have a new book coming out soon called Brave Enough to Let Go, which is talking about this exact thing. It's like realizing the broken road led you to a certain place on your path, the next milestone in your path. And there is a broken road there. And, when you look back, that's the only time you're going to see it, not while you're in it. But when you look back, you are going to see how much stronger you got in so many different ways.
yeah. Wow. That's so good. Yeah. Brave enough to let go. That's that is really good. I can't wait for that one.
Hmm.
Oh, this has been so good. I
Hmm.
love that you shared so generously your wisdom and practical things that anybody can do to get through life, to make this life better and be who you're created to be. So how can people get in touch with you and get your book and all of that?
Well, BerniceMcDonald.com will take you anywhere. My book's on Amazon. But, one thing I do want to share with people is something I'm really excited about because this came about accidentally. It wasn't even something, but I have created an AI that is called the Tiny Brave Steps Generator. And anybody can opt in for it at tinybravesteps.com. It's free. But what it is a tool that is powered by Chat GPT, but it has a lot of my philosophy built into it. And so you can go there, you can put in any struggle you're having with it, life or business. And it will walk you through your feelings. It'll walk you through the things that are triggering this. And it'll, in the end, give you three small steps that you can take to help you move forward. One is a 90-second step, actually, it's called, which is a mindset step. And then there are two little 5-minute things you can do that will just help you to move ahead and to make sense of where you're at. So, for our listeners, like I just would love it if people were getting some encouragement to get out of being stuck and instead having the courage to put their hairy little toe over the line, take a step. And because that's when the courage kicks in. When you start to feel you're making a little bit of progress, that's where courage shows up.
Oh, that's so good. It's so good that the tool is out there for us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Of course,
Mm,
all of this will be in the show notes too. So people can
thanks, Kim.
reference it anytime they want to. And thank you so much, Bernice. This has just been a joy. It's just been wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it. And you're a wonderful host. It's so good to talk to you and just connect heart to heart. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
heart to heart. Exactly. I love that. Yeah. And thank you all for joining us today. I appreciate you being here and I hope you got as much out of it as I did. Bernice is just fantastic. And so go buy her book and go to her new AI and go to her website and discover more and get ready for more books to come. And I just pray that until we see each other again, that you keep your heart open and you live your love loud.